Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning coffee with Doc Jeff. I'm going to start off. Your doctor told you this is a lifelong condition, that once you're diabetic, you manage it. You don't beat it. I want to spend the next hour showing you why that is one of the most dangerous things that a patient can be told. Okay. We're going to talk about that. And this whole diabetes thing is really remarkable that we can get into that. And we'll talk about all the different types of diabetes. But before we get in there, I'm Dr. Jeff Evenson. I'm a board certified doctor of holistic health. I am founder and practitioner at Evenson Holistic Natural Health Center. And I practice off my homestead here in northern Minnesota. I work with clients in person here on the homestead office or through telehealth. So I have clients all over the country, and it's really fun and remarkable to be able to do this kind of work. I had a client yesterday that I was able to sit with, and it's I never know what's going to come up in some of my sessions with people. And yesterday I just felt driven to pray with my clients, and they received it well. They were open to that. And that's really kind of new for me as I get into, as I continue my practice. I've been doing this for over 17 years. And I won't say that was the first time I felt called to sit in prayer with them, but it was definitely something that I think was needed. I felt was needed in that moment. Not the comment was, as they were leaving, the doctors at Fairview don't sit and do that with us. And so that tells me a lot, about what's going on. Let's get, the weather here has been fantastic over the last few days. We've got a couple viewers there. Let me turn on my comments. And look at that, Christine is on top of it. She's a regular to the show. I've had her on the show. We've hosted together. She's a really special lady to me, and I love her so immensely. So Christine, thank you for your support, and good luck with achieving your milestones today. I know you have worked hard, and I know you'll be able to pull it off. So that's exciting. If anybody else is tuning in, drop a comment in where you're watching from. I've got the comments that you should be able to comment from any platform. Oh, look at that. She loves me too. That hits me in the feels. So grab your coffee. Let's get comfortable, because this morning we're going to go deep on something that affects tens of millions of Americans. Okay, and most of them don't even know the story has already started for them. Okay, this morning we're talking about insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and the full diabetes spectrum. Okay, that includes type 1. In my research for my show today, I learned there's another type out there called LADA, or LADA. We'll talk about what that is. And type 2. But here's what I really want to land today. Type 2 diabetes is not, it's not a sudden event. You didn't suddenly wake up with type 2 diabetes. Okay? It's the end of a very long process. And the question I want every one of you to sit with this morning is, how long has that process been running in your body? Because your body has been talking to you for years. And today we're going to learn what it's been saying. Okay? So I've been in holistic practice since 2009. I use advanced muscle testing techniques derived from applied kinesiology. I practice, I'm a master clinician or advanced clinician in quantum nutrition testing, nutrition response testing. Uh, Cellcore Biosciences has their own technique. I'm certified in all of their levels. And I use that to find what's actually driving dysfunction in a specific person. Okay. Not a protocol, not a standard panel, the actual root cause in that body on that day. Okay. And what I see clinically week after week is that the metabolic breakdown we're talking about this morning starts years, sometimes decades before anyone gets a medical diagnosis. And that's not acceptable to me. And it shouldn't be acceptable to you. And good morning, Lisa. Thank you for joining the show. She says, finally seeing you live. I really appreciate it, Lisa. It means a lot. Your support means a lot. Lisa is a very talented nurse, cardiac, if I remember right, a cardiac thoracic nurse, and is shifting her career into quantum nutrition testing, and she's doing phenomenal with it. Okay, so I appreciate you jumping on, Lisa. So let's talk about metabolism. Okay, I want to build that foundation with you guys. All right. Metabolism, this word, it gets thrown around constantly. Slow metabolism, you have a fast metabolism, or there's metabolic damage. But what does it actually mean? Okay, metabolism, here we go. Metabolism is every chemical reaction your body runs to generate and use energy. Okay, let me say that again. Metabolism is every chemical reaction your body runs to generate and use energy. Every single one. Digestion, detoxification, cellular repair, brain function, hormone production. It all runs on metabolic energy. And so when metabolism is working, you feel alive. And when it starts to break down, the decline is slow and quiet at first, then it isn't. So what's the cell's job, okay, in this? At the cellular level, here's what's supposed to happen, okay? You eat food. It breaks down into glucose. Glucose enters the bloodstream, insulin, a hormone made by your pancreas, knocks on the cell door and says, open up, energy is here. I might even have a picture. Here we go. So little image there superimposed over my face. When you eat food, it breaks down into glucose. Glucose enters the bloodstream. Insulin, a hormone made by your pancreas, knocks on the cell door and says, open up, energy is here. The cell opens, glucose comes in, it gets converted to ATP, adenosine triphosphate, in the mitochondria. Your cellular power plants, okay? The mitochondria is your cellular power plants. And you have energy, clean, efficient, beautiful. That's how it's designed to work. Okay. The problem isn't the sugar. The problem is that the cell stops answering the door. Okay. And if you look, the key looks a little broken there and the lock is broken. the cell stops answering. You can't, it won't take it in. Okay. So this is why mitochondrial health is everything in this conversation. If your mitochondria are damaged from toxic load, poor nutrition, chronic stress, oxidative damage, the cell can't process energy efficiently even when glucose gets in. You become energy inefficient. You're eating plenty, but starving at the cellular level. And that's the foundation for everything that we're going to talk about today. All right. Now, I saw something pop up on my radar here. Let me just take a quick look. I want to make sure nobody's having trouble getting into the show. Okay. I guess it was not important. All right. So let's talk about the diabetes spectrum. It's time to take a little more coffee on this one. We're going to go deep. All right. So most people think that there are two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Okay. But it's actually a spectrum, and the more research that comes out, and I'm not going to talk about it too much today. There's actually a type 3 out there, and they're considering that to be what dementia is, and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, that type kind of thing. Those kinds of things may fit into type 3 diabetes. Okay. But it's actually a spectrum, and understanding the full picture matters, especially so you understand why today's focus is specifically going to be on type 2 and why it's the one we can actually address at the root. Okay, so let's talk about some of these. Type 1 is where autoimmune destruction is happening. Okay, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. The immune system, for reasons still debated, attacks and destroys the beta cells in the pancreas. Those are the cells that make insulin. When they're gone, the body can't produce insulin at all. Now, this typically presents early in life, often in childhood or young adulthood, though it can appear at any age. Type 1 requires insulin therapy for survival. It is not caused by lifestyle. It is not reversible in the conventional sense, and anyone who tells a type 1 diabetic they did this to themselves doesn't understand the condition. Okay? But my focus today is not type 1, but I want to honor those who live with it. It's a serious lifelong challenge. Okay? There's this one I learned about as I was putting my script together, my notes for the show today. It's called LADA, L-A-D-A, and it's often referred to apparently as the misdiagnosed middle. Okay, LADA stands for latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. It's often called type 1.5 because it's autoimmune like type 1, but it progresses slowly, sometimes over years. Many LADA patients are initially misdiagnosed as type 2. They're put on oral medications that don't work the way expected because the real issue is the same beta cell destruction happening in type 1, just at a slower pace. So if you or someone you know was diagnosed with type 2 as an adult and standard treatments aren't working well, LADA is worth asking a doctor about, but it's also a good entry point into holistic care, because I'm of the opinion that if there are still beta cells in existence and there's something eating away at that, let's figure out what that is and try to intervene holistically, with homeopathics, with lifestyle changes, and that's where a good coach can come into play. Um, and that's the type of work that I do here. Okay, and so it's definitely worth checking out. You know, if the standard protocols that they're putting you on aren't working, then staying on them is fits that definition of insanity that we all are familiar with. Okay. So type 2 is really the reversible one. Okay. Type 2 is fundamentally different, where the pancreas still makes insulin. Often it makes a lot of it, especially early on. The problem is that the cells have stopped responding to it. This is insulin resistance. And unlike type 1, this is a process, a slow moving, systemic, largely lifestyle driven process that unfolds over years, which also means it is something we can intervene on. And that's the hope in this conversation. And I don't use the word hope lightly, I see it clinically. Reversal is real. So let's talk a little bit about the hormones a little bit, insulin, cortisol, and the breaking point of this. What insulin resistance actually is, and I wanted to bring in the cortisol connection because nobody explains how that fits into the picture. Okay. And I'm looking at the show time and I feel like I'm talking slow, but I feel like I'm going really fast. And so the show might be shorter than an hour today, and that's okay. It'll be what it is. All right. So let's talk about what insulin resistance actually is, because the explanation most people get is incomplete. Your cells have insulin receptors on their surface. Think of them like locks, okay? And insulin is the key. And it goes back to this. Insulin is the key, okay? The cell receptor is the lock. So you have to have the key to open the lock. I know. So when everything is working, insulin fits perfectly. The lock opens up, glucose enters, and energy is produced. Okay? But here's what happens over time with chronic blood sugar elevation, chronic inflammation, toxic load, and chronic stress. Those receptor sites get damaged. The lock gets worn out. Insulin shows up. The key is there, but the door won't open the way that it should. So glucose stays in the blood. The pancreas senses this and pumps out even more insulin to compensate. And they call it, this is hyperinsulinemia. Okay? It works for a while until it doesn't. And so high insulin is not the treatment. High insulin is the warning siren going off in the building before the roof caves in. So enter cortisol here. Now here's the piece almost nobody explains, and I think it's the most important piece in modern metabolic health. It's cortisol. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone made by your adrenal glands. It is the counter-regulatory hormone to insulin, meaning its job is literally the opposite of insulin's job. While insulin lowers blood sugar and drives glucose into the cells, cortisol raises blood sugar and pulls glucose out of storage for immediate use. And that's not a flaw, that's how it was designed. When a threat appears, you need fast energy. And so cortisol is going to help pull that energy out, pull that glucose out of your fat cells, convert the fat back into glucose, and cortisol delivers that. So you need energy if you have to run away from, run to safety from whatever's chasing you. So it's really kind of interesting because it creates a modern problem. Here's what happens in 2026, okay? Most people are living in a chronic low-grade stress state that never shuts off. Whether it's work pressure, financial stress, an inflammatory diet, poor sleep, environmental toxins, relationship strain, social media overstimulation. Yes, that's a thing. Every one of those is a cortisol trigger. And when cortisol is elevated chronically, it is constantly pushing glucose into the bloodstream. Not because you ate anything, just because your nervous system thinks you're in danger. Now, insulin has to respond to that too. Day after day, year after year, the pancreas is working overtime. The receptors are getting worn down, and the whole system is moving toward insulin resistance, driven not just by food, but by unrelenting stress load. Okay? And here's the kicker. Cortisol specifically drives visceral fat storage. That's the deep abdominal fat around your organs. This fat is not just stored energy. It is metabolically active. It produces inflammatory signals that further damage insulin receptor function. So the cortisol-driven stress response creates the fat that accelerates the insulin resistance that makes the glucose control worse, that drives more cortisol. It's a self-reinforcing loop, okay? And that's why you cannot just fix the diet and call it done. You have to address the whole system, which I do when I'm working with my clients. It's called the holistic approach, mind, body, and spirit. Okay? And so I have a Bible verse here from Philippians. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That's from Philippians 4, verse 6 and 7. Okay? I bring that verse in here intentionally because what Paul is describing in Philippians is a physiological reality that science is only now catching up with. Chronic anxiety is chronic cortisol breaks the body down. Peace, which is genuine, grounded, spirit-rooted peace, is not just emotional, it is metabolic medicine. And I believe that with everything in me. Okay? So, we have the ignore list, okay? This is the part that I'm when I put this together, I was kind of excited to talk about it because when I'm working with type 2 people, some of the dialogues that we have is how long have they gone ignoring all of the signals and the symptoms? Okay. Our modern lifestyle sets us up for failure in terms of teaching us, and we learn how to ignore those symptoms that the body is telling us clearly. There's signs. There's going to be signs. Okay. And when you get to the point of the type 2 diabetes diagnosis, that tells me that you've been ignoring those signs for a long time. So we're going to talk about what this ignore list is. Okay. And this is what your body's been saying for years before your medical diagnosis. I don't diagnose. So most people come to me have already been medically diagnosed, okay, from their doctors. I am not a medical doctor. I do not practice medicine. I don't pretend to practice medicine. Okay. So here's something your medical doctor will almost certainly never say to you. Okay. A type 2 diabetes diagnosis does not represent the beginning of the problem. It represents the end of years of compensation. Okay. By the time fasting glucose hits 126 or your A1C crosses the 6.5, which is the clinical thresholds for diagnosis, insulin resistance has typically been present for 10 to 15 years, sometimes longer. The body has been working overtime, compensating, adapting, pushing back against the dysfunction. The diagnosis is what happens when it finally runs out of runway. When your body finally runs out of runway. So, folks, your body was never silent. You just weren't taught what it was saying. Okay, so here are the signals. And I think I found a picture that I wanted to share with you. Here, insulin resistance. All right, this fits in here with the signals. Let's see if I can go to the left. Take that off. It won't let me move the image. There we go. I'll just do that. Okay. So here are the signals. All right. Fatigue after meals, especially carbohydrate heavy meals. You eat, and within an hour, you want to sleep. That's a blood sugar spike and crash. That's insulin working harder than it should. We all have felt that, I'm sure, especially after Thanksgiving, when you overeat and you just like, boof, so much, the sweet potatoes and all the salads and all the, and then the desserts, okay? That can give you an example of what the fatigue feels like. For a body that's been adapting and trying to stay engaged every day, you're going to feel this about an hour after you eat. Your blood sugar spikes and crashes. All right. Another sign is constant carbohydrate cravings. The food you crave is a huge signal about what the body is looking for. The brain runs on glucose and ketones, okay? But when cells can't absorb it efficiently, the brain keeps demanding more. And so the cravings aren't a character flaw, they're a metabolic signal. The brain is prompting you to eat more carbs because you're looking for that energy to keep going. Here's another signal. Belly fat that won't move. Specifically the abdominal fat. You all know what I'm talking about. Look in the image there. Okay. You exercise, you watch what you eat, and it stays. That's cortisol. That's visceral fat driven by stress hormones and insulin resistance. Okay. Brain fog. Here's another sign. Brain fog. You have difficulty concentrating, word retrieval, mental fatigue by mid-morning. The brain is the most glucose-hungry organ in your body. When glucose metabolism is disrupted, cognitive function is one of the first casualties. Now you can understand why it might lead into the type 3 that we talked about. And folks, this is, a topic that's, I'll give you a little personal context too, as we're talking about the signals, because I'm being reminded, I've seen these signals in my mom who, in her last few years, she was in a memory care unit with dementia and unmanaged diabetes. Okay. I remember going to visit her there, and she would have such sores on her feet, and her feet would always be bandaged up, and they couldn't bandage them up because they're trying to get air in there to dry them out. And the open sores on her feet, you could literally look into her feet. It was so like, disgusting. God bless the medical people who can take care of that kind of stuff, because it's gross, it's nasty, and very, very painful for the people experiencing it. Okay. And we'll talk more about that as we get there. But I can remember times sitting with her with the brain fog. She, it's like you want to wave at her. It's like, hey, I'm right here, It's awful, awful to watch somebody go through that. And it's even more awful for the person experiencing it, of course. And when I look at, as I put this topic together, it's like, some of that could have been prevented. It could have been, I always forget to hit the go live on Instagram. It could have been avoided. Okay. Potentially. So here's another signal. Poor sleep quality. All right. Difficulty falling asleep. You wake up between 1 and 3 a.m. You're never feeling rested. This is what happens. Cortisol dysregulation disrupts the circadian rhythm. Your blood sugar instability overnight triggers cortisol surges that wake you up. Okay. Slow wound healing. Another one. This is one I was talking about. Cuts that take longer than they should. High blood glucose impairs circulation and immune function at the tissue level. And sometimes the wounds on the extremities can get so bad that they have to amputate. Then there's frequent urination. The kidneys, they're working to filter excess glucose from the blood. And that often shows up years before diagnosis, and it's dismissed. Then you have another one, increased thirst. The downstream effect of fluid loss from frequent urination. The body's trying to dilute the glucose load. So sometimes you feel like you can't get enough water. And then you may have, here's another sign, tingling in your hands and feet. That's early peripheral neuropathy. Okay. Elevated glucose damages small nerve fibers, and this is a late stage pre-diagnosis signal. And Lisa here says, right, Jeff, peripheral vascular disease. Almost always see this in diabetic patients. Thank you for the comment, Lisa. And then there's darkened skin patches, acanthosis nigricans. That's the scientific word for it, I guess. Darkened, I'm going to stick with darkened skin patches. Typically at the neck, armpits, or groin. And this is a direct marker of high circulating insulin. Okay. Many people dismiss it as a skin issue, and it's really a metabolic alarm. You want to pay attention to that. And then here we have high triglycerides and low HDL on your blood work. Okay. A combination that shows up on standard panels but rarely gets explained in the context of insulin resistance. This is metabolic syndrome beginning to show its hand. And so here's a checkpoint. Which brings me to the metabolic syndrome. This is the clinical checkpoint on the road to type 2. A diagnosis of metabolic syndrome means 5 specific markers have clustered, and those are elevated fasting glucose, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, high blood pressure, and abdominal obesity. With waist circumference over 40 inches for men and 35 for women. Okay. Having 3 or more of those qualifies, and metabolic syndrome is not a coincidence. It's a unified metabolic dysfunction. It is your body at the last rest stop before the highway ends. The window to turn around is still open, but most people don't even know they're in metabolic syndrome because no one has connected the dots for them. Okay, so we're going to talk about reversing type 2, and this is the real roadmap, what it actually takes to turn this around. So we're going to talk about the reframe. Here's what I want every type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic or metabolic syndrome person watching this morning to hear clearly. This is not a sentence. Type 2 diabetes is a process that moved in one direction for years. Now the goal is to reverse the direction of that process. This is not a fantasy. That is biology. The body wants to heal. It is designed to regulate. Our job is to stop blocking it and start supporting it. So it's regulation before force. And my clinical philosophy is regulation before force. Before we push anything, supplements, protocols, interventions, we have to restore the body's ability to regulate itself. In the context of metabolic health, that means drainage, detoxification, adrenal support, gut integrity, and liver function. Because here's what most people don't realize. The liver is central to blood sugar regulation. It stores glucose, releases it, and also processes every toxin that burdens the metabolic system. So a congested liver cannot regulate blood sugar effectively, period. You can't outrun liver congestion with a better diet. All right, so how are we going to do this? Well, one, we're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to remove the triggers. We're going to start a process to eliminate processed sugars, refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils, and artificial sweeteners. These are direct insulin triggers and mitochondrial toxins. This is not a diet. It's a removal of interference and a replacement with real food grown in real soil, prepared simply. That's the foundation. A lot of times I'll tell my clients the real food that I teach people to eat again is the food that has eyes. Okay? animals, animal protein, fish, and it's live food, things grown in the soil. And I'm talking about real soil, not the over chemicalized crap that the farmers are forced to work with. We've got to get back to eating real food, prepared simply. Okay. Now, we're going to work on blood sugar stability. We're going to eat for signaling, not calories. We'll prioritize protein and healthy fat at every meal to blunt the glucose response. We're going to time your meals. Give your pancreas recovery windows. Intermittent fasting, done appropriately for your adrenal status, can dramatically improve insulin sensitivity by giving receptor sites time to reset. We're going to look at adrenal support. We're going to address the cortisol at the root. You cannot fix insulin resistance while living in chronic cortisol elevation. That means sleep has to become non-negotiable. Stress regulation through prayer, meditation, time and creation, breath work, cold movement, exercise is not optional. And for many people, the adrenals need direct nutritional support because they've been depleted by years of chronic activation. I can't count the number of people over the years that are so stressed out by their jobs. And folks, I used to be in that position. I got so stressed out, and for me, I would typically hold on to my stress and manifest it right here in my middle section. I've talked about this on other shows before. So much stress that I blew a gasket, developed a hiatal hernia, and the anxiety that goes with all of that. I ended up having to have surgery to fix that. You don't want to do that, trust me. Knowing what I know today, I would have tried a much more conservative approach to fix that. And one of those approaches would have taken me down the process to make peace with the stress in my life, whether it was a stressful job, work environment, all that. Family stress. Folks, the stress is unbelievable all around us. Okay? The digital stress, the screen, the scrolling on your screen. When's the last time you walked outside of your house and left your phone behind? Okay? You should try that sometime. A little digital detox. All right. We're going to look at liver and drainage support. The liver must be able to process glucose. It must be able to clear toxins and produce bile for fat digestion. You have bitters, there's bile support, and targeted drainage protocols are often necessary before any deeper intervention can work. Okay? This is where my clinical work begins, clearing the path before we try to move the freight. And I start every one of my clients out on what I call phase one. I have a 3-phase approach to working people back into health. Phase one means we're together for 3 months, weekly. Whether you're here in person in the office or we do a Zoom call, but we have a check-in point every week for 3 months. Over the years, I've found that to be the most successful process to work people through to help them achieve better health, to get their life back. Okay? That is possible. And I've been doing it for over 17 years. All right. Another thing we're going to look at is gut integrity, the absorption factor. Okay? Here, what I'm talking about is leaky gut and dysbiosis drive systemic inflammation that directly worsens insulin resistance. Okay? The gut is upstream of everything. If the gut wall is compromised, talking about leaky gut here, you are absorbing bacterial endotoxins that trigger an immune response that drives cortisol, that drives glucose. It's all connected. It's all connected. It creates the inflammation throughout your gut, throughout your body. All right. Now I'm going to look at mitochondrial support. Okay, we have to rebuild those power plants. We're looking at supplementation here, CoQ10, magnesium, B vitamins, alpha lipoic acid, and targeted peptides that can support mitochondrial function and help cells regain their ability to process glucose. But these work best once drainage and toxin burden are addressed first, and sequence matters. And then muscle movement, the underrated insulin sensitizer. It's going to make your cells more sensitive to insulin. Muscle contraction is one of the most powerful insulin-independent glucose uptake mechanisms in the body. When you move, muscle cells pull glucose in without needing insulin at all. So a 10-minute walk after meals can blunt the glucose spikes significantly. This is why back in the day, I always remember growing up, my parents, especially my grandparents, would always want to take a walk after dinner. They probably weren't thinking about it in terms of glucose, reducing the glucose spikes. They just knew it made them feel better. Okay? Resistance training builds muscle mass that acts as a permanent glucose buffer. And folks, this is free medicine here. But a lot of times by the time people come to me, they're in such a depleted state, they can't start off with movement. And some people, over the years, I've had only a few where I've had to invite them to stop working out because it was too much for their body. Their body could never build up any reserves of energy to do the healing that it needed to do. Had to back them out of their exercise, start working on the things we've already talked about on this list here, and then reintroduce the movement. Okay. Now, I got the last one here, toxic load reduction. Heavy metals, pesticides, plasticizers, and environmental chemicals directly damage insulin receptor sites and mitochondria. If your toxic load is high, and in most Americans it is, and in most of my clients it is, and it's not just toxins, it's pathogens. Here I'm talking about parasites. I'm at a point right now where probably 80% of the people that I'm actively working with are on parasite protocols. We are pulling worms out of them. And the worms, the parasites, when they're inside of them, are adding to the toxic load because they are spewing out these toxins. You eat them up, keep spewing them out. They're pooping inside of you. That adds to the toxic load. And so it's there in most Americans. Metabolic healing has a ceiling until the toxic burden is addressed. And this is often the missing piece in people who do everything right and still don't see results. Okay? So the body will heal when you stop overloading it and start supporting what it was already trying to do. So this is where quantum nutrition testing becomes essential. I can identify with precision, without guesswork, which of these systems is the primary driver of metabolic dysfunction in a specific person. Is it the adrenals, the liver? Is it gut pathogens driving inflammation? Is it a heavy metal burden on the pancreas? a nutrient deficiency in the mitochondrial chain. Everyone gets a different answer because everyone's body is a different story. And so generic protocols produce generic results. Instead, my clients get a map of their specific terrain. Every program that I put together for people is unique to that person. I could have, 5 people come in with the same exact symptoms, but every one of their programs is going to be built unique and specific to them. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with some truth and hope and maybe a next step. Here's what I want you to walk away with this morning. Okay. Your body is not broken. It is responding intelligently, faithfully to everything it has been exposed to. Years of the wrong food, years of chronic stress, years of environmental toxin accumulation, years of sleep debt, years of a healthcare system that manages numbers instead of restoring function. Your body has been compensating heroically. What it needs now is a partner who understands the language it's speaking and knows how to respond. The hard truth is that metabolic disease doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't reverse overnight either. Anyone promising you a quick fix is selling you something. What I can promise you is that if you commit to the process, a real structured root cause process, your body has an extraordinary capacity to move in the right direction. I watch it happen every week in real people who were told there was no other option. There is always another option. And so I have a quote here from Brendan Vermeer. I believe prevention is the best treatment. And the greatest medicine of all is to teach people how to not need it. How to not need medicine. That is the whole mission of this show. That's the whole mission of my practice. I don't want you to need me forever either. I want you to learn your body well enough that you become your own first line of defense. That's what I do. Really teach people how to get their health back again. Teach people how to have a new relationship with food. Teach people how to reintegrate back into life, how to invite that vitality in. I had a client this week where she told me she had written a letter about her death. And without judgment, that's not a right or wrong action for people to take. But instead, I invited her to write a letter about life and what she wanted to get her health back to. That is what I'm helping people do, is get their life back. So, if what you heard this morning resonated, if you're sitting there identifying with those signals on the ignore list that we talked about, or you have have a type 2 diagnosis and you're ready to actually address what's driving it, I want to have a conversation with you. Okay? My day 1 assessment is where everything begins. It's a comprehensive intake and muscle testing session where I start mapping the actual terrain of your metabolic dysfunction. No assumptions, no generic protocols, just your body telling its story with someone in the room who knows how to listen. So I work with clients in person at my center here in Finlayson, Minnesota, and via telehealth nationwide. So if you're ready to stop managing this and start reversing it, reach out. Okay, let me turn on my contact information right here. Okay, my contact information is right there on the bottom of the screen. And also, if this show helped you this morning, share it. Okay, send it to someone you love who needs to hear this. That's how we change things. I can't do this battle on my own. I need your help. We all know people that need some kind of help like this. Okay. The more people we help, the greater our society becomes. All right. So let's close in prayer. Father, we come to you this morning with gratitude for the bodies you gave us, designed with breathtaking intelligence, built to heal and regulate and restore. You formed us with care, and that care did not end at creation. It never ends. Lord, I pray for everyone watching today who is struggling, the ones who are tired, not just physically tired, but tired of fighting a body they don't understand, tired of getting answers that don't lead anywhere, tired of being told that management is the best they can hope for. I pray you would replace that exhaustion with clarity and that clarity with courage. I pray for the ones who recognize themselves in that ignore list this morning, who heard those signals and felt the weight of years they can't get back. Father, meet them right there. Remind them that your mercies are new every morning, that the process of healing can begin today, that it is not too late. Give them wisdom to know what steps to take. Give them the will to take them. Surround them with practitioners and community who honor the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, the way you created us to be honored. And Father, let this work we do be in service of something larger than a practice or a platform. Let it be in service of your people reclaiming the health you intended for them so they can live fully in the calling you placed on their lives. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. All right, folks, that is the end of today's episode 98. I'm 2 away from 100. I still am not sure what I'm going to do for episode 100. So yeah, that's coming. If you have ideas on what I should cover for episode 100, post them in the comments, direct message me, whatever. Let me know. I'm open to your ideas too. So thank you. Love all of you. We'll talk to you later.